The twin suns beat down hard on the desert market of Ras Torek, and the sand beneath old Tarek's feet burned through the solace of his worn boots. His back ached as he lifted another jug of purified water onto the rusted stall's shelf. Alien. Merchants passed him with smug faces, sneering at the human water vendor, who limped and coughed like he was older than the dunes themselves. Still dragging those bones around, human? One of the Zarnik's guards barked, his reptilian face twisted. In amusement, bet your water's as stale as your breath. The others laughed as they passed, not bothering to wait for a reply. Tarek didn't speak. He only nodded slowly and turned his head back to the cart. The smile tugging at the edge of his cracked lips was hidden beneath the shadow of his hood. To them, he was just another broken relic left behind after the war. A forgotten man with sunburned skin and calloused hands who sold water in a dying outpost where only heat and mockery grew. But none of them knew what was buried beneath the dust on his boots and the scars on his arms. A group of young alien scavengers kicked sand at his stall as they ran past, and one even grabbed a bottle without paying. Tarek did nothing. His eyes just followed them until they vanished into the crowd. Nearby, a violet-skinned alien girl in a teal uniform watched the scene quietly. She looked half amused and half curious, sipping from her bottle with slow interest. The water vendor moved with the slowness of someone with no more purpose. But when his hand reached for the crate, his fingers curled with the control of a man who knew how to kill without blinking. The crate didn't rattle. The bottle didn't slip. His balance was too perfect for someone that weathered. Still, no one saw. No one ever did. Behind the vendor's stall, mounted on the back wall, was a faded patch sewn into the rusting metal. The cloth had once been bright red and bore the insignia of a long-dead Terran squad. The letters had nearly vanished under the sun, but to those who knew, it still spoke volumes. S-43. Silent Reapers. But no one knew. Not here. Not in a town ruled by Zarniks and crook trade laws. Not in a place where humans had no voice, and their warriors were just stories told by old soldiers and bitter barkeeps. A loud thud echoed through the market as a hoverbike crashed into a fruit stall, sending crates flying. The Zarnik's guards shouted and shoved their way through the crowd, and one aimed his plasma rifle at the injured driver, who lay groaning in the sand. Turek watched silently from behind his stall as the soldiers approached. His hand rested near the crate of bottles, unmoving. The alien girl's brows narrowed. Her eyes flicked from the soldiers to the human and back again. No one else noticed how her hand drifted toward her belt, or how her boots shifted in the sand like she was preparing for something. But she didn't move. She just watched. The guard raised his rifle to fire. Zarnik's territory. No crashes without license. You pay now or you die. The driver coughed blood and tried to lift his hand in surrender. The guard clicked off the safety. The sound of shattering glass rang out. A single bottle smashed against the guard's helmet, spraying water across the hot sand. The crowd gasped. The soldier turned, furious. His eyes locked onto the human vendor, who now stood upright, without a trace of a limp. His shoulders were squared. His chest no longer sagged. "You want a real fight?" Turek said in a voice sharp as a blade. "Then stop aiming at the broken and point that toy at someone who remembers what war smells like." The vendor's eyes gleamed cold. They weren't the eyes of a tired man. They were the eyes of a ghost come home to haunt the living. The soldier shouted a curse and fired, but the beam never hit. It passed through empty air where the vendor had stood. Tarek had already moved, fast, too fast. In a blink, he was beside the guard, driving his knee into the alien's gut and ripping the rifle from his claws. Sand flew as the soldier crumpled to the ground with a groan. The market froze. No one spoke. No one moved. All eyes were on the water vendor, now standing tall with a plasma rifle in hand and a look of pure calm across his face. The purple-skinned girl's lips parted slightly in surprise, her bottle hanging loose from her fingers. Tarek didn't speak. He simply lowered the rifle to the ground and turned back toward his stall. His back was once again bent. His steps slow. The crate of bottles still waited for him. He resumed stacking them as if nothing had happened. As if the war hadn't just returned to Ras Torak in the form of an old man with tired eyes. But the silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of heat or boredom. It was the silence of fear and respect blooming in the place of laughter. They had mocked him. But now they stared at the water vendor like he was a story from a book they didn't believe was real. And somewhere behind him, the purple girl whispered softly, not to anyone in particular, "That was no vendor. That was a soldier in disguise." Asterisk rumors spread fast in Ras Torak. By the next morning, the entire market whispered about the water vendor who took down a Zarnik's guard with nothing but a bottle and his bare hands. Some laughed nervously, pretending it was luck. Others avoided his stall, watching him with wide eyes and silent mouths. Tarek returned to his usual work. His cart had been cleaned, the bottles neatly arranged again. He said nothing to anyone. Not about the soldier he knocked out, not about the past. Not about why his hands still moved like they belonged to a warrior and not an old man. The purple-skinned alien girl returned. She stood near his cart, not speaking at first. Her name was Kiara. She wore a low-ranking officer's badge from the Orion Peace Command. But in a place like this, that meant nothing. No one respected peacekeepers here. She watched Tariq with a thoughtful gaze as he lifted a new water barrel. "Onto the rack, you moved like a ghost," she said quietly. Not even elite Orion cadets could dodge a plasma bolt like that. Tarek grunted and wiped his hands on a dirty cloth. He didn't meet her eyes. "Then your cadets need better training," he replied. Kiara smiled at the edge of his sharp answer. She pulled a small silver coin from her pocket and placed it on the table. "That's not for the water. That's for the lesson you gave yesterday." Tarek didn't take the coin. He just turned his back and kept working. Behind them, a group of Zarnik soldiers moved through the crowd. These ones weren't like the regular guards. Their armor was black smooth and marked with red claws. Special Enforcement Unit. Known across the system for being ruthless and unforgiving. One of them pointed toward Tarek's stall. Another spoke into his cum. The squad began spreading out, pushing civilians aside as they cleared a path. Kiara stiffened. "They're not here for a drink," she whispered. Tarek's eyes narrowed. "They're here for payback," he said. Then he grabbed a wrench and began tightening a loose bolt on his cart like nothing had changed. The soldiers approached. Their leader, taller than the rest and with glowing red eyes under his helmet, stopped in front of the stall. His voice came out through a voice box, distorted and harsh. "You assaulted a Zarnik's enforcer," he said. "That's a punishable offense." Tarek didn't flinch. "That enforcer was about to kill a man who made a mistake," he said. Leader stepped forward. "You will come with us now. Resistance will be treated as treason." Tarek didn't answer. He simply raised the wrench, turned it slowly, and then set it down beside the crate of bottles. "Let's make one thing clear," he said. "I'm not resisting. I'm just not surrendering either." The soldiers raised their weapons. The market held its breath. Kiara's hand hovered near her sidearm. The air grew heavy with heat and tension. Then, without warning, Tarek moved. He kicked the crate forward, sending water bottles crashing into the soldier's legs. At the same time, he grabbed the wrench and swung it upward, catching the lead soldier's helmet and sending sparks flying. Plasma bolts fired, but Tarek was already moving through the smoke and confusion like a shadow. Kiara joined the fight. Her training kicked in as she fired her blaster at the soldier's legs, aiming to disable, not kill. The crowd scattered in panic. The dust turned thick. Shouts and blasts echoed through the market. Tarek used every part of the stall to his advantage. He ducked under beams, bounced off shelves, and used falling crates as cover. He wasn't just fighting. He was controlling the battlefield. Like a man who had done this too many times before, one soldier managed to get behind him. The plasma blade hummed as it activated, but Tarek spun and grabbed the soldier's arm before the blade could fall. With a single practiced motion, he disarmed the attacker and slammed him into the cart's metal frame. Kiara fired a shot that knocked another soldier's helmet clean off. The moment it hit the ground, the remaining enforcers hesitated. Their numbers were dropping, fast, and the two before them weren't just fighters. They were survivors. The black-armored leader roared and charged forward. Tarek dropped his wrench and caught the attacker mid-swing. Their struggle was brutal, raw. No tricks, just strength and grit. In the end, the old vendor dropped to one knee and twisted, using the leader's own momentum to flip him over. When the dust finally settled, 6 soldiers lay unconscious or groaning. Tarek stood tall again, breathing steady. Kiara looked around, her chest rising and falling. "You could have killed them," she said. "Why didn't you?" Tarek turned away, picking up the crate and setting it back where it belonged. "Killing is easy," he said. "Teaching them not to come back is harder." The market stayed quiet after that. Not out of fear, but out of respect. The old vendor wasn't. 3 days passed, and no soldiers came back to the market. The broken stalls were fixed. The fear faded from the vendor's eyes, but the respect for Tarek didn't fade. Now when he walked through the sand, people stepped aside. He still sold. Water, he still spoke little, but something had changed. Kiara noticed it first. His back was no longer bent. His hands no longer trembled when he lifted crates. His presence felt heavy now, like a storm waiting to strike. Kiara returned daily, sometimes to buy water, sometimes just to sit near his cart. She didn't ask questions, but her silence was filled with curiosity. Tarek ignored her at first, but on the 4th day, he finally spoke. "You're not just a peacekeeper," he said without looking at her. "You carry yourself like someone who's seen war." Kiara blinked, surprised. "And you're not just a vendor. You fight like you trained half the galaxy." Tarek allowed himself a quiet smile before going back to his bottles. That night, as the twin suns set, Kiara stood outside her quarters, watching the stars. She couldn't shake the image of the old man flipping an armored soldier with ease. She knew elite tactics when she saw them. But more than that, she recognized the look in his eyes. It was the look of someone who had lost too much. Elsewhere, deep beneath the city's command station, the Zarnik's council reviewed footage of the market fight. A commander slammed his clawed fist on the table. "That human was supposed to be dead," he growled. "If he's really who I think he is, this settlement is in danger." Another officer leaned forward. "You mean the ghost of Taraxis? He vanished 10 years ago." The first nodded grimly. "He didn't vanish. He went underground." The council ordered an immediate bounty. Tarek was now a target, not just of the local enforcers, but of the syndicate lords and bounty hunters who roamed the stars. The price was high. Dead or alive, the hunters would come. That much was certain. The next morning, Tarek found a note tied to his cart. A warning: "They know who you are. Get out now." No signature, no clue. But he recognized the handwriting. It was from someone he hadn't heard from in a long time. Someone who once served under him. Kiara arrived shortly after. "They've put a bounty on you," she said. "It's already spreading across systems." Tarek didn't flinch. "Then they're scared." Kiara crossed her arms. "You should leave. You won't survive if bounty hunters start arriving." Tarek looked at her then, really looked. "I didn't come here to survive," he said. "I came to bury something." That night the first hunter arrived. A towering creature from the outer moons, dressed in armor made from bone and steel. He didn't speak. He just approached the water cart with a scanner in hand. Tarek didn't move. He let the scanner beep and flash. ID confirmed. The hunter growled. You're worth a fortune, old man. Turek tilted his head. Fortunes? Not what you think it is. The hunter raised a pulse cannon. You have 5 seconds to kneel. Turek didn't count. He moved. The crate beside him flew into the hunter's chest, sending him back 2 steps. Turek was already in the air, landing a spinning kick that cracked the hunter's mask. The cannon fired, but it hit sand. Kiara joined the fight, firing 2 clean shots that disabled the hunter's exosuit. The battle was short. The hunter lay groaning in the dust, bound in cords from Tarek's stall. Kiara stared at him. You didn't kill him. Tarek shook his head. Not yet. Let him crawl back and tell the others what waits for them. More would come. Tarek knew it. They wouldn't stop until they had his head. He could run. But that wasn't who he was. He had run once, a long time ago. And that choice had cost him everything. Now he had a different path. Kiara looked at him with a new expression. Not curiosity, not confusion. It was respect, deep and genuine. Why here? She asked. Why? Did you choose this place to hide? Tarek stared at the stars above. Because this was the last place I bled for. And the only place I failed. Kiara waited for him to say more. But he didn't. The past was a wound he didn't reopen easily. Still, she stayed beside him. Whatever war was coming, she had decided. She wouldn't watch it from the sidelines. In the shadows of the buildings, another figure watched the scene. Cloaked in dark fabric, with eyes hidden behind a visor. He marked something on a pad and vanished back into the alleys. The real hunters were still on their way. Tarek cleaned his stall the next morning, as if nothing had happened. The people still came, still bought water. But now they didn't joke. They didn't mock. They nodded, quietly, with respect. A warrior didn't need a battlefield to show his worth. Sometimes all he needed was a stall, a crate, and the will to stand. When others knelt, and Tarek would stand until the very end. Asterisk, the next wave didn't come quietly. It came with fire. Before the twin suns had fully risen, the southern edge of Ras Torak erupted in flames. An explosion rocked the marketplace, shattering windows and sending dust clouds rolling into the streets. Tarek felt the blast before he saw it. His hands, still steady from years of training, dropped the water container mid-lift and reached for the hidden compartment under his cart. Inside, wrapped in cloth, rested a weapon he hadn't touched in a decade. An old pulse rifle, battered but deadly. Kiara arrived seconds later. Her armor was scorched, and her breathing was heavy. They hit the east gate, 3 buildings down. Civilians injured. These aren't bounty hunters. They're professionals. Tarek nodded once and pulled back the rifle's bolt with practiced ease. That means they've grown impatient. Civilians screamed in the distance. Fires spread from one tent to another. The air smelled of smoke and blood. Vendors scattered, clutching their children and goods. The enemy moved through the chaos in perfect formation. 6 in total. They wore no insignias. Black suits, chrome visors, silent weapons. Tarek moved like a shadow, through alleyways, past carts, over rooftops. Each step calculated. Kara followed behind him, her blaster ready. They weren't hunting the attackers. They were stalking them from a rooftop. Tarek spotted the team spreading out. 2 moved toward the water stall. 1 swept the residential sector. The remaining 3 surrounded the central square, controlling escape routes. It was a trap. And it was carefully planned. They're here for you, Kiara whispered. But they don't care about the damage. This is a message. Tarek didn't look at her. He was watching one of the agents below plant a small round object beneath the water cart, a charge. Then I'll send a message back. He dropped from the rooftop in complete silence. His boots struck the ground behind the enemy with precision. The first man turned just as the rifle cracked. The round hit the shoulder, knocking him flat. Turek spun and fired again, taking out the second's leg before he could reach for his blade. Kiara leapt down beside him. Her shot disabled the third attacker's visor, blinding him. She kicked him square in the chest and sent him crashing into a fruit stall. The market shook with sudden violence. Tarek moved toward his cart. The charge blinked red. 10 seconds. He didn't run. He dropped to his knees, pried the bomb from its mount, and hurled it toward the sky. It exploded mid-air with a sound like thunder. People screamed, but they were safe. The cart was intact. And the message was clear. He wasn't going to die. Kneeling, the other agents regrouped fast. Two charged together, flanking him from both sides. Kiara fired a warning shot that missed on purpose, forcing one to dodge left. That gave Tarek enough time to slide under the remaining one and trip him backward with a low sweep. The agent slammed hard into the ground. Tarek was on top of him instantly, wrenching the helmet off and pinning him down. "Who sent you?" he growled. The agent hissed back, "You should have stayed hidden." Then he bit something between his teeth. His body went limp. A kill capsule. Kiara stood above them, breathing heavy. They're serious now. No more second chances. This is war. Tarek looked around the market, now a battlefield. It always was. Just took the rest of them a while to realize it. They left the bodies for the authorities. No one touched them. The people of Ras Torak knew now that standing near Tarek meant danger. Some began to avoid his stall again. Not from shame, but from fear. That night, Tarek sat alone by the fire behind his stall. He didn't sleep. He cleaned his weapon with careful hands. He stared into the flames with the weight of 100 battles behind his eyes. The past wasn't done with him. It had returned to finish what it started. Kiara returned with a data chip. I traced their entry point. It came from a Zarnik ship docked under a false merchant code. It left just after the blast. Tarek nodded. They'll send more, stronger. They want me broken before they finish me. Kiara hesitated. Why? Don't you run? She asked. You could disappear again. Change your name, hide. Tarek looked up at her. His face was calm, but there was fire in his voice. Because every time I ran, someone else died. This time I stand. No more running. The two sat in silence. The night was long. The stars cold. Somewhere far above, another ship entered orbit. Another hunter. Another threat. The war was building around Tarek like a rising tide, but he didn't fear it. He had lived through worse. He had buried friends. He had faced monsters and machines and madness. Now he was facing memory. The worst. Enemy of them all. And this time he would not lose. The attack had changed everything. Ras Torak was no longer just a quiet trade outpost. Patrols doubled. Merchants started closing early, and whispers filled every alley. Torak had become a name feared not just by enemies, but by the very people. He once served water too. Even Kiara noticed the difference. Children no longer ran near the water stall. Old friends passed by without a word. It wasn't disrespect, it was caution. They didn't want to stand too close to the fire. Tarek didn't complain. He knew what came with the fight. The enemy didn't just come with guns, they came with silence. With fear. With the kind of isolation only the most dangerous men carried like armor. Early one morning, Kiara handed him a device. A small holopad with encrypted files. I got this from a contact in the Orion Command. It's about you. Tarek didn't respond. He tapped the screen and watched the flickering images play. Footage of battles long buried. Explosions over moon bases. Stealth drops on jungle planets. Teams moving in the shadows. And in every scene, a figure always leading from the front, silent, relentless. The file labeled him as Captain Turek Voss codename. Ghost Walker. Kiara folded her arms. You were their best. The stories say your squad never failed a mission, until the last one. Tarek's face didn't change. We completed the mission. We just didn't survive it. Kiara leaned forward. What happened to your team? Tarek stared at the dust between his boots. They followed me into a trap. Zarnik's intel said the target was a weapons lab. It was a slaughterhouse. My orders led them there. They trusted me. They died because of it. Kiara's voice softened. You didn't kill them. Tarek looked up, his eyes sharp. I didn't stop it either. He rose from his seat and walked to the edge of the stall. His fingers gripped the edge of the cart like it was the only thing keeping him from falling back into the past. That night, the enemy struck again. But this time, it wasn't a public assault. It was quiet, precise. A shadow moved through the market, cutting through security lines with tools no merchant could afford. This one wasn't a bounty hunter. He was something worse. Kiara sensed it first. Her training screamed. She ran through the dark alleys, weapon drawn. She found the stall empty. Tarek was gone, but there were signs of struggle. Scorch marks on the wall, blood on the sand. She followed the trail out of the city, across the ridge, into the canyons where light didn't reach. Her boots crunched softly over gravel as she reached a narrow cliffside path. That's where she saw them. Tarek stood with his back against a boulder. Across from him, a tall figure in advanced combat armor circled slowly. The intruder's voice echoed through his helmet. You were always a ghost. But ghosts can be hunted. Tarek didn't flinch. And hunters can bleed. They clashed, fast, brutal. The sound of metal against stone. Of fists and blades. Tarek fought with skill sharpened by decades. The attacker moved with machine precision. Neither spoke. Neither backed down. Kiara moved into position from above. Tarek ducked a blade swing and countered with a low sweep, throwing the intruder off balance. You're not Zarnik's, he said. The attacker growled. I work for whoever pays. And right now they're paying for your silence. Kiara fired. Her shot struck the attacker's side, cracking the armor. That was enough. Tarek struck with a full body tackle, knocking the enemy off the edge. The body fell into the canyon below. No scream. Just silence. Tarek breathed hard. Blood ran down his arm. Kiara reached his side and pulled him back to safety. You're bleeding. Tarek nodded. He cut deeper than expected. She tore a strip from her uniform and wrapped his arm tightly. They sat by the ridge's edge, catching their breath. Why do they still fear you? She asked. Why after all these years are they hunting you? Tarek didn't answer right away. Then he spoke, voice low and cold. Because I know things they buried. I saw things they erased. And I'm still alive to talk about them. Kiara looked at him with a new kind of worry, not for his safety, but for what would come next. You can't fight them all forever. Tarek looked up at the stars. I won't have to. Eventually, they'll bring the war to my door. And when they do, I'll make sure it's the last one. They returned to the city before sunrise. Tarek bandaged and silent. Kiara more alert. Than ever, the people watched from shadows. They said nothing. But their silence now held something else. A question, a fear, a hope. The old vendor had survived another hunt. But the war was changing. And it was only just beginning. Asterisk dawn arrived with a chill wind. It was rare in Ras Torak. The heat usually ruled every hour. But today, the breeze carried something different. Something heavy. Tarek stood at his stall with a fresh bandage on. His hands moved slower than usual, but his eyes were sharper than ever. Kiara watched from across the market. She had noticed the change in him. He was still the same man who sold water, but now there was a quiet fire behind his movements. Every step he took was like a silent promise. He was done hiding. A new sound filled the air. Engines. Not the small buzzing of merchant drones or cargo haulers. This was heavier, deeper, dropships, military grade. The crowd grew tense. Heads turned toward the sky as 3 dark ships appeared above the ridge and began to descend. The ships bore no flag, no markings. But Tarek knew exactly who they belonged. To Orion Black Division, a unit that technically did not exist. Kiara's expression confirmed it. "They're here for you," she said. "This is no bounty. This is an operation." Tarek didn't flinch. "Then let's give them a welcome." He reached beneath his stall and pulled out 2 crates. Inside were old gear, dusty and worn. A helmet, a vest, a belt full of tools and shock grenades. Kiara picked up one of the grenades and raised her eyebrow. "You kept these all this time?" she asked. Tarek nodded. A warrior never buries all his weapons. Just the ones he hopes he never needs again. Together, they suited up. Kiara sensed her blaster to Tarek's frequency. They moved through the alleys as one unit. The dropships landed outside the east gate. Black Division soldiers poured out in silent precision, faces hidden behind mirrored masks. Weapons drawn. Their leader stepped forward, scanning the area. "Target is here. Bring him in. Do not speak. Do not hesitate." Tarek moved through the rooftops. He knew the angles. He knew the choke points. This was his city now, his battlefield. Kiara watched his eyes. He wasn't guessing. He was calculating. Like a commander who had never stopped commanding. The first team entered the market. Tarek waited until they passed the spice merchant's tent. Then he dropped a stun charge from above. The blast lit the air with blue light. 3 soldiers dropped instantly. Before the others could react, Kiara fired 2 clean shots from cover, disabling their suits. The leader barked into his cum. "Engage full force, suppress and extract." But the plan was already falling apart. Tarek moved through the chaos like wind through leaves. He struck, vanished, struck again. Each hit was controlled, measured, precise. Kiara covered his flanks, her shots never missing. They worked together like gears in a machine. Every move had purpose. Every risk had reward. The market burned, but the people didn't flee. They watched, hiding behind stalls, waiting to see if the old vendor would fall. He didn't. The Black Division regrouped near the central well, 20 of them. Trained killers. Tarek stepped into the open, unarmed. He held up his hands. "I surrender," he said. The leader raised a hand to signal capture. That was the mistake. Kiara dropped from above, knocking the front guard off balance. At the same moment, Tarek exploded into motion. His fists and elbows struck like iron. He didn't need a weapon. He was one. Within seconds, 6 more soldiers fell. The fight turned brutal. No time to think. No time to speak. Just survival. Tarek took a shot to the shoulder but kept going. Kiara was grazed along her side but didn't slow down. The battle raged until only 4 enemies remained standing. Leader called for retreat. A high-pitched signal echoed through the helmets. The soldiers moved fast, carrying their wounded. Within minutes, the ships rose again and vanished into the clouds. The market stood silent again. Tarek leaned against a wall, breathing heavy. Blood stained his vest. Kiara supported him as he slid to the ground. "You should rest," she said. Tarek nodded. "After I cleaned my stall, the people began to emerge. One by one, they stepped closer. No one laughed. No one mocked. A young merchant approached with a bottle of ice fruit juice. "For the vendor," he said. Tarek took it with a nod. A silent thank you. Kiara looked around. "They respect you now." Tarek shook his head. "They don't respect me. They respect what I fought for. And they're starting to see it was never just water I was selling." That night, the Council of Ras Torak met in secret. For the first time in years, they discussed resistance, unity, defense, and they all agreed on one thing. If war was coming, they would rather stand beside the water vendor than behind the enemy. Far beyond the stars, a final order was signed. A kill order. Not capture, not silence, just death. And the one assigned to carry it out was known only by one name, the Butcher of Varnes. The sun rose blood orange on the final day. Turek stood beside his stall, body bandaged but firm. His eyes scanned the empty horizon. The market was quiet, too quiet. Merchants had shuttered their shops. Families stayed inside. The city had become a stage for one last fight. Kiara paced nearby, her rifle freshly cleaned, her eyes restless. They sent him, didn't they? She asked. Turek didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone in the galaxy had heard the name. The Butcher of Varnes, a living executioner. No survivors. No mercy. A signal buzzed through the local comms. Static, then a voice like a dying machine. Turek Voss, today you fall. No rescue, no delay. The line cut off. Turek took one breath. Then another. This ends now, he said. Kiara gripped her weapon tighter. We don't have to face him alone. There are people who would stand with you. Turek shook his head. They've given enough. This is my debt to settle. The sky split as a dark ship descended, slower than any before. It was sleek, black, death in metal form. When it touched the ground, the hatch opened with a hiss. A single figure stepped out. The Butcher was taller than any soldier, wrapped in armor soaked in battles past. His face was hidden. His silence screamed louder than any words. Turek stepped forward alone. The two men stood face to face, a gap of 10 meters between them. Neither moved. Neither blinked. The market held its breath. Then the Butcher spoke. I killed your squad, he said. I remember their screams. Turek didn't flinch. Then remember this too. He struck first. Not with hesitation, but with fury. The Butcher blocked. With ease, the ground cracked beneath their boots. Fists met steel. Blades sang. The battle was like thunder. Nothing gentle. Nothing held back. Kiara watched from the rooftop, desperate to help. But she knew this wasn't her fight. Not yet. This was between ghosts. Between unfinished wars. Between a past and a man who refused to be buried. Turek bled. The Butcher's blows were heavy. Precise. Each strike meant to break, not bruise. But Turek moved like a storm, controlled, angry, focused. He wasn't the man they thought had vanished. He was the man they hoped would never return. The Butcher tried to pin him. Turek rolled and came up with a blade in hand. He slashed, cutting across armor. Sparks flew. The crowd behind broken windows gasped. They had never seen combat like this. It wasn't just a fight. It was justice. The Butcher roared and threw Turek across the square. He landed hard, coughing blood. Kiara ran to him, but he raised a hand. No, stay back. She froze. Her hands shook. You're dying. Turek rose slowly, one knee at a time. Then I'll die standing. The Butcher charged again. But this time, Turek didn't dodge. He stepped in, too close for the blade. He grabbed the Butcher's arm and twisted hard, locking the joints. Then he pulled a small device from his belt. A charge, silent, deadly. He shoved it against the Butcher's chest. Tell them I died fighting, Turek whispered. Then he let go. The explosion wasn't loud, it was a pulse. A flash of light. A force that knocked Kiara off her feet. When the dust cleared, two figures lay on the ground. One moved. One didn't. Kiara crawled to him. Tarek's chest rose and fell slowly. Blood poured from his side. She pressed down hard. Stay with me, she said. You're not finished. Turek smiled through the pain. I am now. Behind them, the Butcher lay motionless. His armor cracked open. Face burned. Dead. The people of Rastorok came out one by one. They carried cloth and rope. They lifted Turek gently. They didn't speak. They didn't cry. They moved like a family. A tribe honoring a warrior, Turek lived through the night. Barely, but he never fought again. He returned to his cart weeks later, not as a soldier, not as a threat, but as a man who had nothing left to prove. Kiara stayed by his side, not as a guard, not as a shadow, but as someone who had seen the truth, that legends weren't born in glory. They were built in silence, in pain, in choices no one else could carry. The market changed. Walls were raised, watchtowers built, and in the center of it all, the water stall remained. Old, rusted, proud. The people didn't forget. They remembered every strike, every wound, every sacrifice. They no longer called him the vendor. They called him by the name he once tried to bury, Captain Turek Voss, and they never mocked him again.